And by the way, it's a two-way street, right? And so it's not just about Mexican students, Mexican professors coming to the United States for a period of time. It's also about American
I was
students,
going to ask you about that.
American professors coming to a place like Mexico, sharing what they know, learning, and then going back and being able to take that work back to their home institution.
Consul General, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you part of this conversation. You know, oftentimes when you think about education, you don't think about the U.S. consulate, but certainly I know something that's been a passion of yours. I've heard you before, and I want to hear from you why education in a way like the way we're discussing today matters or should matter for us here on the U.S. side.
Sure. No, I thank you for the opportunity for us to come and join as part of this important binational conversation. I think in part it's personal. My mom was an English teacher and an educator her whole life and career. So I think she instilled that aspect, the importance of education, which I really do consider the base of all that we're doing, right? And so when I think about my diplomatic career, I've spent 26 years now as a U.S. diplomat working in various parts of the world. And the importance of international education is fundamental, I think, for that. Looking at where I've worked, whether it's South America or South Asia, having opportunities for students to come to the United States, get a degree, do exchanges, I think is crucial for our national interests. And just looking parochially, we think about international exchange, they spend approximately $38 billion international students in the United States. It creates hundreds of thousands of jobs in the U.S. as well. So I think there's a huge advantage for us as a country. But we have a unique relationship here at the border between California and Baja California. And this is where I think we've got some interesting kind of unique dynamics that we can take advantage of and really expand a lot of that international education. So the conversation really can increase and we can get to know one another better and see a lot of growth, and particularly here in California and San Diego and in our region, really gain a lot from these opportunities and expand. And so that's why I appreciate your leadership and appreciate these opportunities for us from the part of the consulate to participate.
No, thank you. It's always great to have you provide that perspective. I mean, something you just said earlier that I think in my parochial thinking, thinking not very much beyond California these days because I represent in the state assembly. So I now have more interests that are statewide with our education system and other issues. But certainly as a San Diegan, it's always been a very natural thing to think of us as a region. We're so integrated in so many ways, despite many barriers that just exist just because they do. But you said something that I hadn't even thought about that I think is pretty important. Creating allies and friendships and goodwill with others kind of matters, I guess, to the overall well-being of our nation, and that's what some of these programs with other countries can lead to, right? And you've been in many parts of the world, so you've probably seen it firsthand.
No, absolutely. I think that's the whole point. You have somebody who maybe doesn't understand the U.S. or maybe only sees something on television and has preconceived notions when they come as a student or do professional exchanges. They leave with different perspectives, right? And I think that's an advantage. And it's useful for us as Americans to receive people from other countries on some of these programs. And the U.S. Department of State promotes programs through scholarships, fellowships, exchanges. We do that through the consulate and our embassy. And so that's what we want. We want to have that dynamic. We want to have that mutual understanding. It's beneficial for us, but at the end of the day, it's beneficial for those people that go back to their countries. They take information back, they bring back new perspectives, and it just helps the relationship overall.
I wasn't aware that you had specific programs in the State Department. That's, I think, maybe an important resource for people. I think oftentimes, at least the way I've seen it, and it could be very biased, you assume that people with maybe means or with connections are the only ones who can get into some of these opportunities, but it's open and available to anyone to.
That's right. In fact, between the U.S. and Mexico, we have a very unique scholarship program that the Fulbright is obviously our flagship international program. But within Mexico, we have something called Fulbright Garcia Robles. And so the U.S. government and the Mexican government are jointly working together on a program for exchanges. And you're right. A lot of people do think about, oh, it's only for elite, so it's only for certain people. But no, in fact, these programs are open. And in fact, we have targeted perhaps people who wouldn't normally have access to higher education or a master's degree or some of these programs to really help them think about how they can go back and change their community. So that's one of the things I've really liked. And by the way, it's a two-way street, right? And so it's not just about Mexican students, Mexican professors coming to the United States for a period of time. It's also about American
I
students,
was going to ask you about that.
American professors coming to a place like Mexico, sharing what they know, learning, and then going back and being able to take that work back to their home institution.
There's something about sharing the knowledge that we have and the skill sets that we have, not to say that they don't exist in other places, but maybe a different way of doing things that adds value to the relationship, bilateral relationship, in this case with Mexico, or to the stability of other countries, I assume. I mean, this is not my realm, so I'm learning a lot even from this conversation, but I could see how this could be really, this is really quite valuable.
Absolutely. And when I think about our region, coming back to a theme that we've talked about here today, it's about workforce development, right? And California is a great example. Number 4 economy in the world, right? Huge powerhouse. Part of that is because of the strong relationship we've got with Mexico, right? The U.S. and Mexico, number 1 trade partners in the world. And you really get that sense here in the border region, the dynamism, the trade, the interconnectivity of the relationship. How do we develop and build more of that? Particularly, how do we do more to develop what we need here in California? Thinking about workforce development, thinking about how do you draw more investment, whether that's national investment or international investment that wants to come here. It's education, right? You have an educated workforce, and we have the advantage of being able to have a binational educated workforce that will just continue to draw more investment, continue to create more economic opportunities, I think, for young Californians. And we can share that across the border. And so this is one of the unique opportunities and a unique time. And educators are thinking about it in new ways. They're not just thinking about, traditionally, let's send a student to go do an exchange. They're thinking about, for example, Southwestern Community College having classes in Tijuana for students, whether they're Mexican American or Mexican national, and being able to study and get degrees that are accredited in the United States or vice versa. And so I think new technologies, new ways of thinking about education. It doesn't even necessarily require traveling to another country to be able to get the education and degrees. And so this is the advantage we have here. And so I'm so excited to see leaders across both the U.S. and Mexico, but particularly our border region, thinking about it in new ways.
You're likely one of the most knowledgeable from a global perspective person I've spoken to about this. I'm interested in your perspective because I considered myself to be very homegrown San Diegan, haven't spent a lot of time away. In fact, now, my weekly commute to Sacramento to the state capitol is as much as I've been away. But mobility now and people finding opportunities, that's like a very natural thing. People no longer are kind of traditional like me. You grow up in a community and you stay there for the rest of your life. The world is definitely changing. What has been the perspective in other parts of the world before you came to the border region to be the Consul General of the United States in Tijuana? And what have you seen that's maybe different or that you expected to be happening that maybe isn't happening?
Sure. No, I think, when I think about whether I worked in South America or South Asia, I think there is automatically an interest in the United States, right? As an economic powerhouse, as a symbol for democracy, as an educational center, right? We've always been this kind of magnet and a country that people have looked up to. And so building on kind of that goodwill is part of our job as diplomats, right? To engage with other governments, but also engage with other populations. And so I think we have that advantage with a soft power, traditional sort of means like exchanges, and with education to sort of attract people and help them understand us. In Mexico, it's even greater, I think, because there is so much back and forth, just the natural flow. You see here at the San Ysidro port of entry, 200,000 people a day, kind of going back.
Is that where we're at now?
I think we're about that number.
We're now at 200.
I think it continues to flow. And so in part, you've got a lot of Americans living in Mexico as well, right? And so you've got people who live in Tijuana, commute and work in San Diego. And so it's this interesting dynamic you don't necessarily get in other parts of the world. So what I like about it is there is that strong connection. There is this understanding. I've always said, being a cross-border, particularly a border person like yourself growing up, it's really a superpower. It gives you a different perspective. Not only do you understand and speak perfect Spanish, you understand, speak perfect English, and understand both countries and both cultures. And that helps translate things, I think, to people in other parts of both Mexico and in the U.S. And so that's a strength and a value we want to build on. And education is at the core of all of that, right? And so that's why I'm excited to see what we're doing here today and how we can build on it.
So you had a chance to listen into a couple of the conversations. What do you think, when I've talked to chancellors or presidents of universities sitting where you're sitting at earlier today, I've asked them, okay, which one or two things do you think you can move forward with? What's exciting you about the conversations? What are you picking up from someone who's been listening into the conversations? What do you think we can really come away with as a result of the conversation so far?
I get a sense of hope, a sense of real excitement and thinking differently about things. And so I love that universities are looking at technology to exchange information, to be able to think about joint degree programs, dual degree programs, continuing education too. That's another thing. I think often people think about a community college or a 4-year degree program. A lot of people don't need or want that, right? And some people might need additional education in certain areas, certificate in certain areas. So why don't we have more kind of joint exchange programs on those things as well? And we're hearing people talk about that. We're hearing people talk about traditional education, continuing education, new technologies, new way to think about exchanges. And this is exciting. And I think this is where, again, California and Baja California can be real leaders on so many issues. And education is going to be another one of those places because we have extraordinary leading universities on both sides of the border. And this is the right time, I think, to take advantage of all those.
So we'll likely have some folks from Mexico listening into this conversation, and they might have no idea that studying in the United States or at a university in California is even possible. Obviously, there's a process, right? There's a visa process. Can you, and I don't know it myself, can you, if I were to advise a family member who may be looking to do this and wants to come and study here, what does that look like? How long does it take? Just sort of an overview on that.
Right, sure. So visas are a special category. So a normal person, when they come to visit the United States, might come on a tourist visa, right? Or there's a work visa. Student visas, exchange visas are separate categories. So they're usually an F visa or a J visa, or the most kind of frequent kinds of exchange visas. And you're right, there is a separate process. We've got information on our embassy website on people, how they can apply to those. We normally have a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to get students that are applying to be able to come in. So we're about to start an academic year. If people don't already have their visas in hand, but they've been accepted to a school and they're able to pay for the school, we can accommodate and maybe make some space for them to come in so that they can get their visa, be able to.
So they must, just to be a little bit more clear, they've got to demonstrate they've been accepted or to a program here.
That's the first.
Okay, and that they're able to pay for that program.
To pay for it. Either they've got scholarships, financial aid. Some of those scholarships can be from their home country. Some of those scholarships, like I mentioned, with Fulbright, the U.S. government can pay in conjunction with, or a local university could pay for a scholarship.
And what is the cost for a visa itself?
Well, so student visas are going to be a little bit higher unless you're on a program like a Fulbright. Fulbright will actually help subsidize the cost of a visa. The visa prices are going to be fluctuating a little bit, so we'll have more information to announce on some visa changes. But I just recommend people go on our website for the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. They can get all the latest, and as we do make some visa changes, we'll be able to announce that.
And are you, how much do you work with because you're in Mexico, that's where your post is. How much do you, there's several of you in Mexico, do you work with the institutions down there to help them? Because if I'm a student, if someone's a student at UABC in Baja, or UNAM in Mexico City, or La Salle in Oaxaca, and they want to do one of these programs, they've identified which program, how involved is the consulate in helping people facilitate that with the universities? Are you Are you helping them navigate that? Because it does seem like a little bit
It can
challenging.
be tricky, you're right. And so what we do have, and it's not unique to Mexico, but we do have several of these Education USA centers. The Mexico City obviously has, we have a few throughout the country in Mexico. So if you were just to Google Education USA Mexico, you'd be able to find maybe the nearest one closest to that student or that area. In person or virtually, they can do work with them to understand, does the school require an SAT, a TOEFL, a language exam? They can also help them look for scholarships. There's international foundations and others that are providing scholarships to some of these students and help guide them through some of this academic process, because you're right, it is very confusing. And so part of our goal is to make it as simple and easy as possible so that once they have been accepted and have come to the consulate or the embassy for a visa, we can talk to them. We can easily kind of move through the process. And again, the United States has gained so much from our international students. You think about all these, major American companies that are out there. And it's because of a lot of international students that maybe came, studied, and helped set up a lot of these companies. We see a lot of them in California, for example. So that relationship, I think, is huge. I think it's important that we really articulate the benefits of studying in the United States, but also think about not just coming and studying, but think about some of these new opportunities that might be done virtually, that might be done through some of these new initiatives, thinking with technology, and be able to connect with our institutions in the U.S.
Lastly, just to close, certainly want to thank you for being with us and sharing. One thing perhaps that you can share on the innovation front that perhaps maybe we haven't talked about from, again, your global perspective of things that we could do to collaborate more between institutions of higher education and learning. Is there anything that if we could really just focus a little bit more on that, we could really see some dividends, anything like that that's caught your attention?
Oh gosh, I think we often take a lot of these things for granted, unfortunately, and it requires a lot of work. It requires communities really taking the time. Here in California, we maybe have the advantage of being able to get to know your neighbor, but Americans do need to understand the complexity of that binational relationship. So I would encourage kind of more Americans becoming involved and knowledgeable about what's going on around the world, but also what's going on in our neighborhood as well. And being able to work together, right, to achieve results. And so this requires time, energy, effort, but you can't do any of that unless you're educated. And so that's why I really always encourage working more. My mom would love to hear this. I encourage more on the education theme. And again, it doesn't always have to be higher education. It doesn't always have to be elite universities. You've got outstanding programs that are community colleges, that are smaller four-year universities, and that are continuing education programs. And those are the ones we got to work on.
Yeah, being re-skilled or multi-skilled is more important than ever.
It's crucial.
Thank you, Consul General. It's great to have you.
Pleasure. Thank you.